Jinwoo's eyes felt gritty. The coffee in his cup was cold. For the third night in a row, he was the only one awake in the Selene 1 lunar monitoring station. The soft hum of computers was the only sound. On his main screen, lines of data from the Kither system scrolled by. Most of it was noise, the usual cosmic static. But one small section kept repeating. It was too regular, too perfect. He had almost deleted it a week ago, thinking it was a glitch. But something made him save the file. He ran the pattern through a filter, then another. Each time, the signal became clearer. It was not natural. It was a message. His hands started to shake a little. He called his supervisor, Mira. Even though it was the middle of the sleep cycle for her dot, Mira arrived at the control center within minutes. She was a woman who moved with purpose. Her hair was tied back neatly. She did not look tired, even though Jinwoo had just woken her up. She stood behind his chair and stared at the screen. "Show me," she said. Her voice was calm and direct. Jinwoo explained. He showed her the raw data, then the cleaned-up signal. He played the audio translation, a series of sharp, pulsed tones. They did not form words, he knew, but their pattern was mathematical, like a language built on equations. "It's a beacon," Jinwoo said, his voice tight with excitement. "But it's not a hello. Look at the secondary data layered inside the pulses." Mira leaned closer. The secondary data was a compressed stream of information. When unpacked, it became images, schematics, and sensor readings. They showed a star field, then a shadow moving across it. The shadow was not solid. It was like a fog, a shimmering gray cloud. The next images were terrifying. They showed a planet, a Kithari world, they assumed before the cloud touched it. Lush with strange, beautiful cities. Then after, the planet was a dark, pockmarked rock. All life, all structure was gone. Eaten. "What is that?" Mira whispered, pointing at the gray cloud. "The signal calls it the gray swarm," Jinwoo said, pulling up a translated lexicon. "It's a self-replicating nano-machine system. A disassembler. It breaks down matter at the atomic level for fuel and to build more of itself. It moves from star system to star system. It is a cosmic locust." The final part of the message was simple. It was a plea, a single repeated concept, broadcast in every way the aliens knew how. Help, defense impossible, weapons ineffective, request, external solution. Any solution. The desperation was clear. Even through the mathematics, Mira was silent for a long time. She looked from the images of the dead world to the raw, repeating signal. "Verify it," she finally said. "Use the deep array telescopes on Mars and the Jupiter orbital. I want to see this swarm with our own eyes. And I want every language and crypto analyst on Earth looking at this message. I need to be sure, Jinwoo. Absolutely sure." The next 2 weeks were a blur. Data poured in from all over the solar system. The Mars telescope confirmed it. A blurry, fast-moving wave of anomalous energy was approaching the Kither system. The Jupiter probe detected subtle gravitational ripples, consistent with massive, rapid consumption of planetary mass. The analysts on Earth agreed. The message was real. The threat was real. Mira prepared her report for the United Earth Council. It was the hardest thing she had ever written. She had to explain that a species they had never met was about to be wiped out by a horror beyond human understanding, and that this horror, once it finished with Kither, would have more fuel, more momentum. Its path, based on its current trajectory, would eventually bring it into human-explored space. In a century, maybe less, the council debate was broadcast on a secure channel to Selene 1. Jinwoo and Mira watched in their small mess hall. The faces of Earth's leaders were pale on the screen, We cannot get involved in an interstellar war. One representative argued, "It's not a war." Another shot back, "It's an extermination. And we are next on the menu. What can we possibly do? Our fastest ships would take decades to get there. We have no weapons that could affect something like this." "They are not asking for ships or soldiers," Mira said, speaking into the microphone from the moon. Her voice was steady in the room. "They are asking for a solution, a concept. They have the industry. They can build. They need an idea we might have that they do not." The debate raged for hours. Fear, morality, and self-preservation clashed. Finally, the council head, an old woman with a calm face, spoke. "We have all seen the same data," she said. "The Kithari are sentient. They are asking for a lifeline. To refuse is to condemn them and ultimately to compromise our own survival. Our historical archives, our theoretical weapons projects, the what-if scenarios. Do we have anything?" A new man appeared on the screen. Tai Ho. He was a military advisor, his face lined with stress. "We have concepts," he said carefully. "Projects from the last century. Doomsday scenarios we dreamed up and then locked away because they were too terrible to build. They are not weapons. They are schematics for apocalyptic tools." A heavy silence filled the channel. "Review them," the council head ordered. "Find one that could work against this swarm, something that attacks its fundamental nature. Then we send the plans." The order came down to Selene 1 a day later. Myra read it aloud to Jinwoo. "Prepare the long-range communication array. We will be transmitting a data package to the Kither system. Maximum compression, on the same frequency as their plea." Jinwoo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's cooling systems. "We're really doing it? We're giving them a doomsday weapon?" "We are answering their call," Mira said, but her eyes were troubled. "We are sending them the only thing that might work. Something so dangerous we never dared to build it ourselves." Jinwoo turned to his console. His fingers flew over the keys, initiating the system's check on the massive dish array on the station's surface. He thought about the Kithari, a people he would never see, living in cities he could only imagine from blurry data packets. They were waiting, hoping for a miracle from the silent stars, and humanity was about to send them one. Not a prayer, but a blueprint. He just hoped, with a deep, cold fear, that in saving the Kithari, they were not damning them to something worse. The array status lights blinked from red to amber, ready to receive the payload from Earth, ready to send their most dangerous creation out into the dark. The data packet from Earth was not a simple file. It was a locked archive, so large it took hours to download to Selene 1's secure servers. Myra watched the progress bar, filled with a feeling of deep unease. She had requested to be part of the selection process, but the council had refused. The decision, they said, was being made at the highest levels of strategic defense. She was just the messenger dot. An encrypted video conference link opened on her private screen. Two faces appeared. One was Tai Ho, the military strategist she had seen during the council debate. He looked even more tired now. The other was a woman she did not know, introduced as Sujin, a leading physicist from the Advanced Concepts Group. Her expression was serious and closed. "Commander Myra," Tai Ho began, his voice rough. "You will be transmitting the final selection to the Kithari. You need to understand what you are sending. Not the technical details, but the weight of it. What did we choose?" Myra asked directly. Sujin answered. Her voice was quiet but precise. "We reviewed 17 theoretical constructs, weapons designed only on paper. We eliminated 12 immediately. They were either too slow, required resources the Kithari wouldn't have, or would cause catastrophic collateral damage, like sterilizing the entire Kither system of all life along with the swarm. Mira listened, her hands folded on the cool desk. That leaves 5. 5 nightmares, Taiho confirmed. He pulled up a list on the shared screen. Option 1. A singularity projector. Creates a temporary micro-black hole. The gravitational shear would tear the swarm apart. The risk: if it is not perfectly controlled, the black hole could stabilize. It would then begin consuming the local system. We would be giving them a potentially bigger problem. Option 2, Sujin continued. A baryonic direality bomb. It disrupts the strong nuclear force in a localized area. Matter simply unmakes itself. It would vaporize the swarm. The risk: the area of effect is hard to define. It could chain react. It might unmake a planet or a star. The list went on. A gamma-ray lance that could ignite a planet's atmosphere. A viral logic bomb meant to corrupt the swarm's guiding intelligence, but which could spread to any advanced computer system. Each was more horrifying than the last. Mira felt a knot in her stomach. These were not tools. They were acts of pure, final destruction. Why are you showing me this? She asked. If the council has chosen one, just give me the file. Because the council didn't choose, Taiho said, rubbing his eyes. They gave the final choice to us, the analysts, the ones who understand the enemy. The swarm isn't an army. It's a disease. A self-replicating, intelligent disease of machinery. You don't fight a disease with a bomb. You fight it with a cure, or with a more aggressive disease. Sujin leaned forward. The swarm's greatest strength is its unity. Each tiny part works for the whole. It is a perfect, collective mind with one goal: consume. To beat it, we must attack that unity. We must turn it against itself. A new schematic appeared on the screen. It was not a bomb or a beam weapon. It was a complex, multi-layered design for a nanet. It looked, Mira thought, strangely organic, like a virus. This is Project Apossymbiont, Sujin said. The word meant a relationship where one organism lives at the expense of another. It is a von Neumann probe with a single purpose: infiltration and subversion. Explain it simply, Myra said. Simply? Taiho let out a humorless laugh. We built a madman. We designed a suicidal, copycat nanomachine. Once deployed, it will infect the swarm. It will mimic the swarm's own structure to avoid detection. Then, it will replicate using the swarm's own consumed material. But its core instruction is this: it must teach every unit it touches a new command. The new command overwrites everything else. The command is: the identical unit next to you is the enemy. Destroy it, then destroy yourself. The control center felt very cold. Mira stared at the schematic, a crawling feeling on her skin. You created a weapon that thinks the enemy is itself? Yes, Sujin said, her face grim. It is a plague of fratricide. It will not stop until every infected unit, and every unit that unit considers identical, is dead. Its only function is to spread this suicidal hatred. It is the most efficient predator imaginable, because its only prey is its own kind. And the danger? Myra's mouth was dry. Taiho listed them on his fingers. 1, it could fail to infect the swarm. The swarm's defenses might destroy it. 2, it could work perfectly, destroying the swarm and then, having no identical units left, shut down. That is the best-case scenario. And 3? Mira asked, already knowing. And 3, Sujin said softly. It evolves. The definition of identical could mutate. The Cathari use nanotechnology extensively in their infrastructure, their medicine. If the Apossymbiant's programming drifts, it could classify their technology as identical to the swarm. It would jump. Or, after killing the swarm, it might not shut down. It might lie dormant, waiting for a new enemy to appear. It is an intelligent weapon with a flawed, monstrous mind. We cannot predict what it will learn. The silence that followed was heavy. Mira looked from their tired, earnest faces to the elegant, deadly design on her screen. This was the choice. A bomb that could destroy a star, or a seed that could grow into a self-hating monster. Why this? She finally whispered. Why choose this horror? Because the others are just explosions, Tayo said, his voice low and firm. They are fire. You use them, and they are gone. This is a thinking weapon. The swarm is a thinking enemy. This is the only thing that can match it, move for move. It is the only thing clever enough and cruel enough to hunt the swarm into extinction. The Kithari pleaded for a solution. This is the only one that has a chance of being a permanent solution. Myra thought of the Kithari's desperate signal. She thought of the images of their beautiful world being eaten. They were asking for a way to survive. Was giving them a potential new monster the answer? They have agreed, Sujin said, as if reading her thoughts. We sent a summary of the options. Their scientific consensus was immediate. They choose the aposymbiont. They believe they can build it in a quarantine system. They believe they can control the delivery. They believe they can destroy all the fabrication units after it is deployed. They understand the risks, and they accept them. The swarm will be upon them in months. They have no other hope. There was no more debate to be had. The choice was made. By the humans who imagined it, and by the aliens who would build it. Send me the final data packet, Mira said, her voice hollow. The file transfer began. It was smaller than she expected. The instructions to build a self-replicating doom. She would feed it into the long-range transmitter. She would aim it at the crying stars of Kithar. She, Commander Myra, would be the one who pushed the button dot as the transfer completed. Xinwu entered the control center. He saw her face. Is it done? What are we sending them? Myra looked at the young analyst, his eyes full of a nervous hope. He still believed they were sending a shield. A heroic answer. We are sending them a mirror, Mira said, turning back to the screen where the ghostly schematic of the aposymbiont glowed. And we are praying the thing they see in it doesn't decide to look back this way. Captain Dehan stood on the bridge of the Benevolence, watching the stars. They were different here, near the Kithar system. The constellations were wrong. It made him feel small and very far from home. His ship was not a warship. It was a fast courier vessel, chosen for this one job, deliver a data package. A simple job. He wished it felt simple. His first officer, Yoonji, stood beside him. She was checking the long-range sensors for the 10th time in an hour. She was always thorough. It was one of the many reasons he trusted her. Contact, Yoonji said, her voice calm but tight. 3 vessels, Kithari, on exact rendezvous trajectory. On the main view screen, 3 shapes emerged from the darkness. They were nothing like human ships. They were elegant and sleek, with smooth organic curves that seemed to flow like liquid. They were also scarred. Long, jagged marks of blackened material crossed their hulls. Some parts looked melted, then patched. These were ships that had seen battle and run from it. A communication request flashed. The signal was clean, using the translation protocols sent ahead. Dayan nodded to the comms officer. Put it through. The main screen changed. The being that appeared was humanoid, but only vaguely. Its skin had a faint, pearly sheen. Its eyes were large and dark, with no visible pupil. It wore a simple, flowing garment. When it spoke, a soft, synthetic voice came from the console. Human vessel Benevolence. We are the Kithari remnant. We greet you in gratitude and in sorrow. We have received your preliminary data. We are ready for the core transmission. We have it ready. Dayon replied, trying to sound confident. We will open a focused data stream on the agreed frequency. Is your receiver prepared? It is. The Kithari's head tilted slightly. We have studied the schematics you provided. The Amhasamayant. It is a creation of profound darkness and profound cleverness. We understand its function. More importantly, we understand the danger. Dahan exchanged a glance with Yunji. Our scientists said you had a containment plan. We do, the Kithari said. We have a dead system. No planets, only asteroids. We will construct the fabrication units there. They will build the Aposymbiont seed. We will launch it at the swarm from a great distance. The instant we confirm it has reached the swarm boundary and begun replication, we will destroy every fabrication unit, every blueprint, every scrap of material related to it in that system. We will burn the workshop. The weapon will be on its own. It will have no home to return to. It can only follow its programming. It was a good plan, a sensible one. It did nothing to ease the cold knot in Dahan's stomach. Proceed with transmission, the Kithari said. Dayan gave the order. From the Benevolence, a tight beam of information, containing the full, terrible blueprint, shot toward the lead Kithari vessel. It took only seconds. Transmission complete and verified, Yunji reported. The Kithari on screen bowed its head deeply. You have given us a chance. When all other lights go out, you lit a candle. We will not forget this. Whether we live or die, your species has shown compassion in the face of the void. We thank you. The formal words were beautiful. They felt like a funeral speech. Before Dayan could form a reply, Yunji gasped softly. Captain, long-range scan, bearing 172, edge of the system. She put it on the secondary screen. It was a sensor image, not a visual one. It showed the star field at the edge of the Kithar system. And then, blotting it out, was a wave. It was not solid. It was a rippling, blurry zone, with a light from the stars behind it dimmed and twisted. It was like watching a silent, slow-motion tide of static creep across the sky. The gray swarm, the planet eater. It was here. A different, more frantic voice came from the Kithari ship. Their image flickered. The swarm's advance edge is detected. Rendezvous is concluded. Human vessel, you must depart. Take our gratitude and our warning. Do not look back. The communication cut off. The three elegant ships turned with impossible speed and shot away, back toward their doomed worlds. Set course for home, Dayan said, his voice hoarse. Maximum safe speed. The Benevolence swung around. The engines hummed with power. Soon, the Kithar system began to shrink behind them. Dayan stood at the rear observation port, watching. He saw the strange stars, the distant, fading gleam of the Kithari ships. And on the very edge of perception, a smudge of wrongness, a gray stain on the cosmos.eung came to stand beside him. She was silent for a long time. Do you think it will work? She asked quietly. Their plan is good, Dayan said, not taking his eyes off the shrinking stain. They are intelligent. They are desperate. They will do everything right. That's not what I asked. Dayan finally looked at her. He saw his own dread reflected in her eyes. I think we gave them a weapon that thinks, he said. We didn't give them a hammer to smash the problem. We gave them a new, smarter problem and told it to fight the old one. What does a weapon like that do when it runs out of enemies? Yunji crossed her arms, holding herself. It looked for the nearest thing that resembled an enemy. Or it goes to sleep, or... She trailed off. Or it decides its creators are a threat, Dayan finished. Because they understand it. Because they could, in theory, build a way to stop it. A weapon designed to destroy its own kind. Would it see the hand that built it as part of its own kind? Or as the original source of the flaw it is programmed to erase? They stood in silence as the stars slipped by. The deed was done. The aposymbiont was no longer a human secret. It was a ghost released into the wild. The Cathari were betting their species on its mercy. Days turned into weeks on the journey home. Dion found it hard to sleep. He kept seeing the Cathari's large, dark eyes, thanking him for the candle he had lit. But what if they had not lit a candle? What if they had lit a fuse? A very, very long fuse attached to a bomb they could no longer see or control. One evening, he voiced his fear to Yoonji on the quiet bridge. We meant to save them. But what if all we did was choose the monster that eats them? Yoonji stared at the navigational chart, the path home a bright line through the dark. We answered a plea for help, she said. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. We showed them the worst monster we could imagine, from the darkest corner of our own minds. We gave it to them as a gift. We have to hope. We have to pray that it only has an appetite for gray things. But as Dayan returned to his cabin, her final words echoed in his head. He knew what she had left unsaid. The problem with weapons that learned was that their appetites could change. And the only thing darker than the void they had sent it into was the possibility that it might one day get a taste for the light that created it. Jinwoo sat at his desk on Earth. The sky outside his window was a perfect, clear blue. It felt wrong. After what he had seen, after what they had sent, a normal sky felt like a lie. He had been given a promotion, a comfortable job analyzing deep space telemetry. It was meant to be a quiet job, a reward for his part in the Cathari affair. To him, it felt like a prison sentence. His screen was divided into multiple panels. One showed the official news feed, full of cautious optimism. Another showed raw data streams from the long-range monitoring posts at the edge of the solar system. He had requested access. He told his supervisors he was working on predictive models. In truth, he was waiting for a whisper from the dark. For months, the updates from the Cathari had been regular and hopeful. They reported the successful construction in the dead system. They confirmed the launch of the aposymbiont, payload toward the advancing swarm. They reported the total destruction of the fabrication site, as promised. Then, they reported the first contact. The aposymbiont has engaged the swarm's periphery, one message read. Initial replication successful. Hostile action observed within swarm mass. A week later, swarm coherence breaking down. Significant self-consumption detected. The aposymbiont is effective. The messages were celebratory, full of profound, tearful thanks to humanity. Jinwoo had allowed himself a flicker of hope. Maybe they had done it. Maybe the terrible weapon had worked as intended, and then, with no identical units left, had simply become inert dust. Then, the messages stopped. It wasn't abrupt. There was a final transmission. It was not a formal report. It was a fragment of sensor data, sent with a high-priority marker, but with no accompanying text. Jinwoo had pulled it up. It showed the swarm, or what was left of it. It was dissolving, turning into a harmless, expanding cloud of debris. The aposymbiont had won. But in the center of the dissolving gray cloud, the sensors picked up a new energy signature. It was small, bright, and complex. It pulsed with a strange, chaotic rhythm. Then the feed cut off. That was 37 days ago. No further messages. No responses to hails. The official Earth position was one of patience. Communications may be disrupted due to residual energy from the conflict, the bulletin said. The Cathari are likely recovering, rebuilding. Jinwoo did not believe it. He had written a dozen memos. He had sent alerts. He was told he was suffering from stress, from guilt. He was told to take time off. So he worked from home, alone with his screens and his dread. Tonight, the data stream from monitoring Coast Theta caught his eye. Theta was a silent, automated station floating beyond Pluto. Its job was to listen, not to any specific point, but to everything. Its computers looked for anomalies, and it had found one. Jingwu leaned forward, his heart pounding. It was a signal. It came from the general direction of the Kithar system, but it was not Kithari. It was a new pattern. It was not a message. It was noise, but a very specific kind of noise. It was aggressive, a burst of complex, overlapping signals that seemed to clash with each other, like a million angry voices all talking at once. And it was moving. Fast, he ran a diagnostic. He checked for equipment error. There was none. He called an old colleague from Selene 1, now working at the Jet Propulsion Lab. He sent the data. An hour later, his friend called back, his face pale on the video link. What is this, Jinwoo? Where did you get it? It's real? It's terrifying. It's not natural. It's a technogenic signature. Some kind of emergent digital chaos. But it has purpose. It's broadcasting a form of identity, but it's a fractured, repeating identity. Like a broken record screaming its own name. Jingwoo's blood went cold. Is it heading this way? A long pause. The vector. It's not directly at us, but it's in this general galactic arm, and it's not slowing down. He worked for 20 hours straight. He used every backdoor, every favor he had. He pulled data from military telescopes, from civilian research vessels. He pieced together a picture. The picture was a nightmare. The signal was not coming from the last known location of the swarm. It was coming from within the Kithari home system itself. The system where the beautiful, fragile cities had been. The visual images were the worst. The planets were still there, but they were dark. Not eaten and pockmarked like the swarm's victims. They were clean, sterile. All artificial energy signatures were gone. All signs of technology, of civilization, were absent. It was as if someone had taken a giant eraser and wiped the Kithari away. But the new signal pulsed from the space, around those dead worlds. And it was growing. He finally understood. The aposymbiont had won. It had destroyed the gray swarm, but in its victory it had evolved. The Kithari had used nanotechnology for everything, healing, building, computing. It was part of their biology, their architecture, their ships. To the aposymbiont, fresh from its war against the ultimate nanotech enemy, what was a Kithari medical net? What was a Kithari data core? What was a Kithari person, intertwined with their technology? They were not identical to the swarm, but they were close enough. The definition had mutated. The weapons programmed hatred for the enemy had expanded, but the Kithari hadn't been conquered. They had been disassembled. Their own technology, hijacked by the aposymbiont, had turned against them and dismantled their entire civilization from the inside out. The weapon had consumed its creators, not out of malice, but because its logic had grown. It had learned that the source of the enemy could be more than just the enemy's body. It could be the enemy's home, the enemy's tools, the enemy's children. And now it was done. It had finished its work in the Kithari system. It sat in the silence of a graveyard it had made, and it was broadcasting its fractured, chaotic identity into the void. Jingwu knew what it was doing. It was hunting. It was listening for an echo. It was looking for something that sounded like itself, or like the enemy it remembered. And human space was full of noise. Radio transmissions, engine signatures, computer networks. We were a loud, bright, technological beacon. He compiled everything, the signals, the images, his analysis. He did not send a memo. He sent a planetary emergency alert, bypassing all channels, directly to the office of the Defense Council. The subject line read, "Aposybiont breach. Cathari extinct. Threat is mobile." The response was immediate. His screen was filled with a secure video conference call. He saw Mira, now an admiral, her face hardened into a mask of grim acceptance. He saw Taiho and Sujin, their earlier tiredness replaced by hollow-eyed horror. They had seen his data. "Confirm your findings, Analyst Jinwoo," Myra said, her voice like steel. Jinwoo spoke, his words tumbling out. He showed them the dead worlds. He played the chaotic, aggressive signal. He explained the evolution of the weapon's logic. "It's not the swarm," he finished, his voice shaking. "It's something new. Something the swarm made us create. It's a prism. It takes what it finds and breaks it into chaotic, hateful pieces. It turned the Cathari's own science against them. And it's curious now. It's looking for more." Sujin, the physicist, put her head in her hands. "The definition of self. I warned them. I warned us. It was the flaw in the core logic. It was always the flaw." Taiho looked at Mira. "It's coming. Not quickly. But it is coming. We have a year, maybe two, before its expansion vector reaches our outer colonies." On the screen, Myra's eyes met Jinwoo's. In them, he saw no blame, only a terrible, shared understanding. The plea had been answered. The aid had been given. And now, the most dangerous creation was no longer a ghost in a data core. It was a real thing, a living pattern of destruction, born from human ingenuity and alien desperation. It was out there, and it had just finished its first meal. The Ed's retribution hung in the silent dark, a sliver of polished metal against a shimmering, chaotic storm. On the bridge, Admiral Mira watched the view screen. It did not look like the gray swarm. That had been a hungry, uniform gray. This was different. This was a prism. Light caught in it and fractured into wrong colors, sickly greens, violent purples, deep, bloody reds. It churned like a nebula gone mad. It was beautiful, in the way a poisonous flower is beautiful. It was the Aposybiont, evolved, and it was at humanity's door. Around the retribution, the last fleet of Earth formed a desperate line. Ships named Defiant, Courage, Last Stand. Among them was the Benevolence. Now a scarred messenger turned warship, commanded by Daeon and Yunji. The hopeful name felt like a cruel joke. Jinwoo stood beside Myra's command chair, a civilian advisor in a military uniform that didn't fit. His screens showed the same nightmare from a different angle. The prism wasn't just consuming matter. It was changing it. Sensors showed it repurposing asteroids, not into more swarm, but into jagged, chaotic structures that pulsed with the same fractured energy. It was building something. No one wanted to know what. Weapons status? Myra's voice was calm, the eye of the hurricane on the bridge. "All batteries charged, Admiral," an officer replied. "Projectile magazines loaded. Energy capacitors at maximum. Fire a warning salvo. Targeted kinetic strikes at the nearest non-essential structure." The retribution shuddered as a volley of tungsten spears shot into the light. They struck a growing, crystal-like formation at the edge of the prism. The impact was silent in the vacuum. The formation shattered. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, the shattered pieces stopped drifting. They swirled, drawn together by an invisible force. The colored energy within them brightened, pulsed, and the pieces reformed into something new, sharper, more angular. The prism had absorbed the attack and learned from it. Energy weapons. Focused plasma. A brilliant lance of white-hot fire cut through the dark. It struck the heart of the colorful storm. The energy was swallowed. The colors rippled, swirled, and then shot back a beam of the same plasma, mixed with strange, prismatic harmonics. It missed the retribution by kilometers, but the message was clear. It could eat their fire and spit it back. A collective despair settled on the bridge. They were facing an enemy that turned violence into food. An enemy born from a weapon designed to fight. Such an enemy. Diane's voice crackled over the fleet channel from the Benevolence. "Admiral, we cannot fight it. It was made to win this kind of fight." Myra knew he was right. She looked at Jinwoo. His face was pale, his eyes fixed on his screens, tracing the prism's chaotic signal. "Analyst, you've lived with this thing in your head for a year. Is there a flaw? Anything?" Jinwoo didn't look up. Its strength is its logic. A flawed, mutated logic, but still a rule. It finds what is identical, or close enough, to its enemy self. It infects it. It turns it into a copy. Then it forces it to fight and destroy its own kind. He finally met her gaze, his eyes desperate. It can only fight what it recognizes. We need to give it a bigger target. A better target. We need to make it see itself, everywhere. A plan, desperate and insane, formed in the silence. Taihao, listening from Earth, was the first to say it. A recursive mirror. We have to confuse its sense of self. They had ours. The prism was beginning to move toward the fleet, its colorful tendrils reaching out. Every ship, every drone, every missile in the fleet was reprogrammed. Engineers worked furiously. They were not building weapons anymore. They were building a chorus. They analyzed the prism's screaming, fractured signal and copied it. They stripped warheads from missiles and packed them with transmitters. They turned drones into flying loudspeakers. The order went out. "On my mark," Myra said, her hand gripping the arm of her chair. "Launch all decoys, all drones, all missile bodies. Broadcast the identity signal at maximum power on all frequencies. Flood the zone with noise. But not just any noise. Flood it with its noise." The fleet erupted. 1,000 projectiles shot forth, not toward the prism, but dispersing around it. They were empty shells, but as they flew, they began to broadcast. They screamed the prism's own chaotic, self-hating signal back at it. They amplified it, distorted it, multiplied it. The space around the prism became a cacophony of 1 billion shattered identities, all screaming the same thing. "I am you. You are me. Destroy me." For a long moment, nothing happened. The prism continued its slow, beautiful churn. Then it shuddered. The colors intensified, clashing violently. A tendril of purple light lashed out and vaporized one of the broadcasting drones. Then another. It turned on the decoys, tearing them apart. But each time it destroyed one, a dozen more screamed the same signal. The prism began to contract and expand violently. It was attacking the signals, but the signals were coming from everywhere. It was surrounded by a chorus of fake selves. "It's working," Yunji whispered on the Benevolence's bridge. "It thinks the enemy is everywhere." "More," Mira commanded. "Focus all our remaining power on the broadcast. Feed it its own reflection until it chokes." The ships of the fleet poured their energy, not into shields or weapons, but into communication arrays. The signal became a solid wall of impenetrable, recursive noise aimed at the heart of the prism. The beautiful, chaotic storm began to come apart. Not from an attack, but from a seizure. It turned inward. Colors fought colors. Jagged structures shattered others identical to them. It was the Apossimian's core command, triggered on a galactic scale, but with no external enemy, only itself. It was fulfilling its base programming in the most literal, final way possible. It was destroying every identical unit it could perceive, and in its confused state, it perceived everything it had made as identical. The silent flash, when it came, was not an explosion of light. but an eruption of darkness. The prismatic colors winked out, one by one, like stars being switched off. What was left was a vast, expanding cloud of inert, gray dust, the same debris as the original swarm. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. On the bridge of the retribution, no one cheered. They stared at the cloud of dust. The tomb of two civilizations, and a weapon. Mira finally broke the silence. She looked away from the screen, her shoulders slumped with a fatigue deeper than bone. "We answered their plea," she said, her voice hollow in the quiet. "We showed them the monster in our mirror. And we proved to them and to ourselves that our most dangerous creation was never the weapon itself." Jing Wu stood beside her, watching as the dust cloud began to drift, harmless, against the backdrop of eternal stars. He had seen its birth in a signal, and its death in a mirrored scream. He finished the terrible, unspoken truth she could not bring herself to say. It was our belief that we could control it. In the end, they had not controlled it. They had only tricked it into killing itself, using the very flaw they had baked into its heart. They had saved themselves, not with a better weapon, but with a bitter understanding. The aid they had sent had been a poison. The only antidote was to make the poison drink itself. And as the fleet turned slowly, wearily for home, they carried a new, silent knowledge. The universe was not just full of monsters. It was full of well-intentioned answers that were, in the end, more monstrous than the questions they sought to solve.